Welcome to the Growth Whisperers Podcast, where everything we talk about is about building enduring great companies. Companies that will be around for decades, generations, and ideally, somehow doing good things in the world that we can all feel proud about, or particularly you feel proud about because it's about you. I'm Kevin Lawrence, and I'm here today joined, as I am every week, with my co-host Brad Giles. Brad, how you doing today?
I'm excellent today, thank you. I spent yesterday on a boat in the sun, and when you spend time on a boat in the sun and you are absolutely exhausted at the end of the day and then you sleep really well. Well, that was yesterday, so I'm feeling quite refreshed and good today. Really
Awesome.
good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great as well. I spent a bunch of time in the sun racing go-karts for the last couple of days, and not your typical rental kart center go-karts, but full-blown competitive tag go-karts, which are fun and punishing. So I had a great time. And
the scary ones.
The very scary and the very thrilling ones. I can only imagine it's probably what drug addicts feel like when they're doing their things. The amount of adrenaline pumping through your system as you're inches off the ground, going incredible speeds and pulling massive G's through the corner. So I'm really invigorated by it. I had a great time with some friends, and lots of good things. So let's jump into today's show. And before we get into our topic, what's kind of your word or phrase today, Brad?
Well, I'm glad you asked. Last week I was with a client, been working with them almost a year, and the owner, the CEO of the business, he said it's been an amazing kind of 10 months or 11 months, and he said what I've come to realize is it takes time to understand this stuff, to understand that understanding takes time. So I summarized that, and this is my phrase: it takes time to understand that understanding takes time.
Oh,
it
takes time to understand that understanding takes time. That is really interesting.
Yeah, he said we wanted to get everything done all at once, but it took us time to understand that it's going to take us a long time to understand deeply all of the things that we're working on. And that really stuck with me. That was really good.
Yeah, I love that. And I know there's, I heard someone say that, in order to become a master of something, if you read, a book a week, it would take you 2, 3, 4 years to become masterful at one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And reading a book is not the only way to master it, but there's a lot of work into mastery. That's very interesting. Awesome. So my word of the day, or my phrase of the day is sore ribs. That is and not the types of ribs that you eat, the kind on my body, as I mentioned up front with the go-karting, and it's a feeling of great joy that my ribs are sore, because that means I was having a lot of fun. And these go-karts, you actually wear rib protectors, like a shell you put around your ribs so you don't break them.
Wow.
And I've got an earlier injury from years ago from a race car that hurt my ribs, but it's still a bit tender apparently. But sore ribs is kind of connected to happiness and joy, because I had such a great time out there with my friends who were also, entrepreneurs, and we were having a great time. But these things pull like 3 G's in the corner, and all the pressure is on the edge of the seat digging into ribs. So sore ribs is a proxy for good times, memories, laughs, good fun competition, not always clean competition, because there ends up being a bit of carnage. As I crashed into one of my good friends, and although I sustained the damage, and my other friend slid sideways into me, and it was just a riot. So sore ribs is a proxy for great times, good experiences, good memories, and honing in our craft a little bit better. So that's my phrase for the day.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so let's jump into today's show and what we're talking about, and taking kind of some of the things that we're talking about earlier. We're talking about today is why it's so critical to keep stretching yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm thinking about even me and go-karting, generally that's a sport that young kids do. And we've got a whole group of guys up at the track that are doing this. You don't normally see guys in their 40s and 50s doing this activity. because of how intense it is, and like a lot of things. But why is it so important to keep stretching yourself and your team and your company? You stretching yourself leads to stretching your team, leads to stretching your company, and the opposite is true. If you
Yeah.
get stagnant, then likely your leadership to your team will get stagnant, and likely reasonable probability your company could get stagnant too.
Well, I read something recently, and it spoke about people's people's aim may be different to what their body wants. Okay, so you may want to be happy in your life, but your body, what your body wants and does and craves is your body wants to find comfort, and it wants to find ease. Like the brain is fundamentally lazy, right? So if your body gets into a groove, it wants to stay there. It's the intuition of the brain to say, let's find a way to have an easy and comfortable life where I'm not challenged. And
kind of like a cat curling up on a blanket by a fire.
Exactly.
It's just a nice, cozy place.
That's it. And the animal part of us wants to do that. It wants to find a groove, a nice, easy groove, and drop into that and stay there. But that doesn't necessarily give us the greatest satisfaction in our life. And if you'd been in a groove like that for 10 or 20 years, you can suddenly think, what have I done? And so we want to try to avoid that by consistently stimulating progress, by saying, yes, it's good to be comfortable, but we need to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone on a regular basis.
And it's a big but. It's good to be comfortable, but not really.
Yeah.
It's good to be comfortable, but it's dangerous. It's good to be comfortable, but while we're having a nap, some other things might be going around that could really hurt us, our business, or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
But we'd like to be comfortable.
We do.
Go ahead, Brad.
It's okay. So Jim Collins, he put it best in the image of yin yang. You may be aware of the yin yang symbol. It's a circle that's kind of divided in half with a squiggly line. And on one side, he had protect the core, and on the other, he had stimulate progress. So we need to always be protecting the core, and we need to always be stimulating progress. And it's the same in you, your business, your leadership team, because we have seen many examples where people haven't stimulated progress. And sure, they might make a profit. Sure, they might be going okay, but they can just be coasting along, and then they can become very unsatisfied, or things can change in the market that will then catch up to them.
Yeah, and today's show is really about looking at your ratio of stimulating progress versus protecting the core. And if you protect the core too much, so for example, as companies get more successful, there's more of a tendency to want to protect it. It's like, hey, we got to figure it out. Let's hold it together and just keep doing more of the same. It's kind of like rinse, wash, repeat. Just, or cranking up the handle on the sausage maker. Let's just keep making sausages. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. But that only works for so long until what you're doing is miscalibrated with the environment, or it just you miss opportunities. So, so you could be depending on your business and what's going on, you could be 1% stimulate progress and 99 protect the core. Mm-hmm. Or maybe, and I would say conceptually, as a CEO, you should probably be conceptually 10% stimulate progress, 90% protect the core.
Yeah.
That's because 1% for a lot of companies is not enough progress, right? Now, 90% progress is also dangerous. So really what I want you to think about today is, if you look in your business, what is and only you know the right ratio. What ratio should you as the leader have in your role? And if you're not the CEO or your executive leader, manager, whatever it is, what should your ratio be between protecting the core like relentless execution of all the things that matter, and then stimulating progress, trying something slightly different, tweaking a process, tweaking a, looking at a different market or a different product or a different customer. And it's interesting. Had one CEO that wanted me to work with him. In the end, I had concerns about the business he was in.
Mm.
I he talked like he was a purpose-led CEO who really cared, but it didn't feel like his business was really good for the consumer. He tried to tell me it was good for the consumer. I didn't buy it. Anyways, in the end,
Yeah.
it was probably a mutual decision. We didn't work together. I didn't feel right about it. He probably felt that I didn't feel right for it, which means it wasn't right. But the point of it is, he would read like 100 books a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And as I'm talking to him, he knew every book. I mean, we're professional students and teachers, right? Like we
Yeah.
constantly have to learn in our profession. He knew them all.
Yeah.
But he wasn't doing anything in his business. So
Yeah.
like he could rattle off all the answers, but he wasn't applying them. So he was stimulating intellectual progress,
Mm-hmm.
but getting no traction. And the core of his business, may or may not have been great. But the point of it is, too much of new ideas and too much stimulation can also be really bad for the business. The point of it is you got to manage this tendency to get comfortable and have the right balance of stimulating progress versus protecting the core. And I would figure out your starting point should probably be 10-90. 10 progress, 90 core is about right. And as your company grows as the CEO, the other measure you look at is how far in the future are you working? If you're working today, you're not doing your job. That's another conversation.
Yeah, the leader that you spoke about, having not met him, it sounds like what he wasn't doing was stretching himself or his company. He was reading and learning, and that was great. But you've got to have that stimulate progress. Are you stretching yourself, or are you in the groove?
He was filling his brain, but he wasn't stretching yourself, and that's a great distinction, Brad. Yeah. That's what it was. Filling his brain versus actually, because the only way you stretch yourself is by doing something.
Yep.
Like you've got to apply it. You've got to put yourself in a situation of discomfort and take yourself and literally when you're stretching yourself, there should be a visceral reaction in your body. Like you should feel it. Like something, your heartbeat should not always be regular. Something is taking out of whether the heat of your body is changing, your heartbeat is changing, your brain is something's going on because you're shaking up the system.
Yeah. So what we're saying is you need to work toward mastery, but equally find opportunities to become the student. So it is an mastery. It's an ever. It's a goal that is always on the horizon and you never get there, but coming back and always having the student mindset saying, how can I stretch myself around this particular subject or this item, or how can I push this part of my life or my business or my leadership team onto something new? People want to grow, and growth is tension, and tension is uncomfortable, but tension and uncomfortableness makes us feel incredibly rewarded over time.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like when you become a master and you've earned your stripes, so to say, and you become really good and you become top of the pecking order, right? You're the head of the team or the department or the company or whatever, the division, whatever it is. Our ego quite likes that.
Yeah.
Right. When I just doing some reading on a book about almost like it's the alpha personalities, dominance, being in charge, and how people want that. A lot of people want that. And when they're there, they're quite happy with it and they don't want to give it up and they don't want to risk it. The problem is you become very irrelevant very quickly because people stop, some, not all, some stop taking chances and doing things, and they're not willing to go be the student again because they want to show their dominance and their knowledge and all of these other things. And I remember I joined this business. It was like a network marketing thing I tried in my 20s. It was a wonderful experience.
Mm-hmm.
There ended up being a major side benefit. The product they sold really helped my mom, which was probably one of the biggest benefits. But I met some amazing people in this thing, and it was, I was at the age where I was trying everything,
Yeah.
and I wasn't yet a master, and I was trying to find my path and learning everything I could, and tried a lot of stuff. But I remember this new guy joined the organization, and my sponsor, the guy that brought me into this business, said, this guy is a world class river kayaker. Like,
Yeah.
he teaches the best people. River kayaking, I'm talking like the guys that kayak down, small to medium sized waterfalls and go underwater and flip upside down, all this stuff, right? Like, this guy's a world class, and he's going, the challenge is going to be, he's the man in his world. He is the man. He is the big dog, the top of the heap, whatever
Yeah.
metaphor you want to use. How is he going to be with being the most? Can his ego allow him to go from being the man to being the most? And I'm not going to talk about that person anymore. But the point of it is being the most is hard when you're the man 24/7, or the woman, 24/7. You to have the humility to go and look foolish and to be incapable and at the bottom of the learning curve versus the top. It's hard. And some people can't do it. Some people can't do it. And as a result, they kind of get stuck in being the master from history, not the master today.
So translating that, what we're saying is, if you have a successful company, if you're a leader, it can be really hard to convince yourself to take a gamble on something, to
Yes.
push, to stimulate, to stretch. It can be really hard because you think, well, I don't want to look like a fool in front of these people. I don't want to look like I don't know the answers to everything. I don't want to risk failing, because if I risk failing, then I will look like a fool in front of people. But the opposite of that, which is being in a groove and becoming perhaps irrelevant, or perhaps, not really capitalizing on your potential.
Less effective, let's
Less
just say.
effective. Less effective is a good way to put it. Could be
Mediocre,
much
sorry.
worse.
Yeah.
Could be much worse.
Yeah, and it will be in time. But
Yeah.
the other thing is, what I've seen in some of these people is that they become fearful and risk adverse and rigid. Like they're in a full grown adult's body, but they become like a child inside.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, the confidence is from things they did 20 years ago, not stuff they did recently. And it's great to have that historical confidence. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's like, what have you done recently? Right? And how do you have recent confidence or just historical confidence? And I think that's a great thing for us to to consider for ourselves. Think about yourself. Where do you have recent confidence versus historical confidence? Right? What is the thing that you've really stretched yourself? Like, really stretched yourself, where you're like, wow, this is hard. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, or I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this as well as I would like.
And the biology backs up what we're saying. You need to create new neural pathways by learning new things all the time. And it kind of applies into your organization as well. So over the COVID period, I taught myself how to play the guitar in a very, very poor way. Like, to be able to make a noise is one way to put it. But the point being that I stretched myself to learn something different. And again, because as you age, you've got to create new neural pathways. I actually I'd been quite busy about a month ago, hadn't picked it up, and it was amazing how easily I got straight back into the groove, because I'd cut those neural pathways of learning before. I thought, oh, geez, I'm going to be so rusty, it's not funny. But my point being, the biology supports what we're saying. You've got to continue to stretch yourself and learn new things. Now I'm looking, okay, what can be the next thing that I can stretch myself on or learn? And I think that's kind of what we're saying here. You've got to find ways to become the student, to keep stretching
Yeah.
yourself.
And it's not just intellectually, it's experientially as well. And you and I were chatting a little bit, and I thank some mentors around me who've helped me. And one of the great ones was my mother via my grandmother. My
Yeah.
grandmother, which I wrote about in Your Oxygen Mask First, Betty Howitt, at 80, and she was an entrepreneur. Her and my grandfather were entrepreneurs their whole lives. They owned restaurants all over our great country called Canada, pizza places, burger places, and literally across the country. And it was interesting. And my, I remember going to my grandpa and his place in his basement. And he was doing hydroponics before it became popular by the marijuana growers. He was making hydroponic tomatoes. All this.
Awesome.
Anyways, they were always up to stuff. But what my grandmother used to always say, or inspired by, my mother would say, is just go for it.
Mm.
Keep going for it. Go for it. Go for it. Go for it. My grandmother at 81 went back to university. She was curious about the religions of the world, and she went and studied theology. Do you know, in many countries, I know in Canada, you can go in and sit in, or what they call audit classes, if you're a senior citizen.
That's
So she
awesome.
at 81 was going to university and having a great time, learning like crazy. So, we all need to channel a little bit of the people in our life that really stretch themselves, and that's it's a great role model. And I'm thinking in my own world, I was thinking about this, like, you know, writing another book. A book is a massive thing, right? You and I are working. We're both working on one individually and one together. Taking my firm from being an individual consultant to building a team, that's a whole new learning curve.
Mm.
I mentioned the kart racing earlier in the show. Like, my son was doing it and I was helping him and I was playing around. But
Yeah.
now I'm doing it a little more seriously with my buddies.
Yeah.
That's, and that's, it's fun and it's challenging. And there was a big piece of resistance even with me doing it. If my buddies weren't doing it, I wouldn't be doing it,
Yep.
because it's painful sometimes and it's hard. It's really hard, but it's rejuvenating and energizing as heck. So, you even talked about, learning to barbecue, Brad. You were mentioning that earlier on.
Yeah. Same as the guitar. Like
Yeah.
I probably a few years ago now, I bought and got into this concept of low and slow barbecue, maybe because it's been quite a bit of time in America as well. But yeah, but it was something that was completely different and completely new. And it was, to a degree, stretching myself and having to learn something completely different. So one of the things that we're talking about here is this concept of homeostasis in the body, and how that translates into an organization. Homeostasis is the body's mechanism to regulate itself. That is the respiratory system, the nervous system, all of the organs and systems within the body. They work together to maintain a stable environment. And then when minor changes are detected, all of the body quickly triggers a response to bring the whole body back into this regulation. And that's what can happen in our organizations, is that we can have this corporate kind of homeostasis that keeps us in the groove and works against this this stretching ourselves, this concept of stimulating progress.
It works for preserving the core. It is perfect preserve. And actually, think about it, Brad. A nice one. It preserves the core temperature. Homeostasis preserves the core temperature.
It does.
And so homeostasis is perfect for preserving the core. But if you let it become the only thing, if homeostasis is the operating system on 99% of what you're doing, the 1% might not be enough to keep you relevant. That's where the stretch comes in, right? But we need homeostasis. We need stable systems, repetitive processes, things that produce repetitive but excellent of whatever the customer wants from us, right? That is critical. But if we ourselves get pulled into it too much, we'll become part of that homeostatic system, it'll slip into mediocrity. So it's a brilliant function of our body. It's critical for our companies, but the one thing that is great for us is the one thing that can really mess us up from a business perspective and a leadership perspective.
Yeah, and our body intuitively wants to fall into that comfortable groove. It wants to say, "Yeah, well, we're really in a good spot at work." But you've got to know, like the enemy is within. Like, yes, that is true. It's really funny because you've got this sense of that's what your body wants to do, and then in the middle you've got to be consciously knowing we've got to keep pushing and stretching and growing ourselves and our company and our leaders and our people. But then on the other side, you've got the discipline of the hedgehog. Okay, so that is you've got these three conscious considerations that you've got to think about. We've got to maintain this kind of Goldilocks zone, which is a discipline on focusing on the right things, knowing that on the other extreme that our body intuitively wants to settle down into this groove. But if we don't stimulate progress in the center, we're going to have a long-term sense of pain. And I think about companies like Kodak or Blockbuster, some of these kind of famous case studies where they didn't stimulate progress and suffered the ultimate consequence.
Or they didn't do it enough, fast enough. Interesting.
Yeah.
In one of the case studies on Kodak, they were doing all the right things. They just started too late and they ran out of cash. That's a whole other story. The point of it is that you have to do enough of it, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
So you talked about that Goldilocks zone, and reminded me of when you're speaking something that Jim Collins says is that good is the enemy of great, and like homeostasis is the enemy of progress. And good is okay sometimes, and great can be better. But homeostasis is good, but it's also can hurt you. So some of the things that we talked about up front, and one of the other things that I know for myself is if you notice, and in a way, how do I know that I'm on track? And the leaders that I work with are on track. Is that they're looking for gems from masters, like they're on the hunt for things that would stimulate progress, right? Versus when the ego kicks in and our brain is closed. And I'm not saying it's just about ego. That's a piece, but keep looking and listening. So if you're listening and so I've got one of the founders that we work with is over 80 years old. He's 81 or 82 now. When we did leadership education in his company, he would sit in the front row. He would ask more questions and take more notes than almost anyone in his company. And he is notably successful. This is not a small business, right? He's notably he's been very successful. But in his now, he also still skis 40 or 50 days a year. And we just had a strat planning with that company, and he's got as much energy as anybody else in the room, maybe more. And he's a riot in lots of things. But the point of it is he continues to learn and take risks and push the envelope. And so, lots of different CEOs that we work with are always pushing themselves and challenging themselves in whatever way everyone is different. It was interesting, even for myself, is that so if I'm around a master and if I'm still curious, I know I'm in the right zone.
Yeah.
I met a young kid. He's early 20s at the racetrack on Saturday. And this guy's name's Zach, and he's he's raced all around the world. He's been a champion in this thing called Indy Lights. Really fast, spectacular driver. And I'm always curious. And I was talking to someone about this one corner and how I could go faster. This guy, I've been doing I've been car racing and related stuff for almost 20 years. And I've had dozens of instructors who have taught me so much. It's been amazing adventure. And in kart racing over the last 5, I've learned a lot. This guy gave me one tip, which I'm not going to tell the audience because I don't want my friends to know.
A racing tip on how to race better.
A racing tip on how to be faster.
Okay.
I might tell my friends, but I don't want to disclose it just yet. He gave me a tip because it's fun competition, but it's still competition. He gave me this tip. It was freaking brilliant. It was brilliant. It was a simple thing. And I'm like, Isn't it amazing when I said to him, when you talk to masters, you learn so much. He goes, yeah, I've been doing it for years. And every person gives you these little tidbits, but so he's still looking for his little tidbits and passing them along. So the point of it is, now I happen to have this cart racing on my mind today, but anything in business, when you're around someone who is masterful, if you're asking questions and curious, you're probably in the right state of mind.
You are. And that questioning should help to get you to ponder, how can we stretch? That questioning,
Yes.
like it may
how can we push farther, be better? Yes.
It may feel a little bit bipolar, today's episode, but that questioning, that understanding should be helping you to understand, how can we stretch the company, myself, our leadership team, everyone within the discipline of the hedgehog concept and our SMAC recipe. So pushing forward.
Yeah. Pushing forward, because generally organizations want to, and we spend a lot of our time in execution mode thinking about how we master what is.
Yeah.
And that's why this is important. So something for you to think about is, who is a master that you are around or could be around that you could ask a bunch of questions of? And literally be curious and learn. That would be one thing. Or the second piece, which is one of my favorite strategies, if there is something you want to stretch yourself with or in, what master can you get to help you?
Yes.
Right? Like if you're going to really stretch yourself, like my thing is, who's the best person in the world you can find to help you? Mm-hmm. And learn from them, or best person in your world, whatever it happens to be, but ask them. So, with that in mind, the thing, and this is in chapter 16 of Your Oxygen Mask First, and it's called Keep Going For It, as I mentioned, inspired by my grandmother. And we asked earlier, like, when was the last time you did something that really stretched you? We all have these ideas. There's this thing called bucket list. Things you want to accomplish in your life, and I think it's a great idea, and I've done it, and I've done many of the things on my list. I still haven't been to Egypt, and I haven't been on an African safari. Those are two things on my list. I've done the hot air balloon ride and lots of other cool stuff I wanted to do. But Egypt and safari, and that will come post-COVID when it opens back up. But the thing when I was writing that chapter of the book, I came up with this thing called, it's a stretch list.
Yeah.
What are these things, whether it's at work, for yourself, or in your life, that you feel compelled to, like, again, for you, it was barbecue and guitar was on your list. Right. And for me, there's been a bunch of many different things. And, currently it's karting and next learning how to drive a race car with a lot of downforce, which is a whole other thing that's on my, coming up for me. But it's what's the list of things that you want to do that would stretch you? And, I go back in my early 20s, when I took singing lessons from a teacher who taught professional singers and dancers and actors how to sing, full blown, right down to the master class where you stand in a circle with all these professional performers. And I was just a young sales guy, and learning how to sing.
Yeah.
But it was on my list because I got told I sounded like a dead horse every time it was someone's birthday and it was time to sing happy birthday. So, but the point of it is we have these things. You got something, these things are.
I can't imagine that a dead horse sounds like a really nice thing to listen to.
Dying. It was not a nice thing. It was probably a dying horse is probably a better word than dead horse. Dying horse, like, whatever sound it would make. So, but it's like, make a list of the things that you've thought about that you would like to do. And maybe you haven't for whatever reason, whatever story, but make a list of those things. It's already there. Like, you already kind of know. And if you believe in brilliant or divine direction or, internal guidance, you probably already know what you got to do. You just got to, sign up.
I remember when I was about 30, I thought I need to exercise. And so I got some shoes on and I decided to run around the block. It might've been one or two suburban blocks. And I got back and I was that exhausted. I lie on the floor, just absolutely knackered. And then maybe a year or two later, we were living on kind of a main street, and I can remember there was this event called the City to Surf. So people run from the city into the surf. It's about 10 kilometers. And I got up that morning, and I think I went out to the bins or something, because we're living in a complex, and I heard all of these there's no sound quite like the sound of a running event, where all you can hear is hundreds and hundreds of people's feet, shoes hitting the floor. And I never forget that sound. And I thought, wow, I could never do that. And as soon as I said I can never do that, that was planting the seed, to think, oh, well, I could maybe do like a 5K. And anyway, so then 12 months later, when that event came around, I did it. And that was the beginning. And then I did a 21 kilometer run. And then I eventually did a 42 kilometer, 26 mile run. And then eventually I did the Boston Marathon, and the Sydney Marathon. And so you don't think that it would be possible, but you just have to keep stretching yourself.
Yes.
And now I can very comfortably run, an hour without issue. Just get up and do it. And I guess that's a story of change. But my point is, at that point, I didn't even think it was possible to run 10 kilometers or 11 kilometers. And I just thought, well, I could probably do a little bit. And 12 months later, I was there.
And what we find is almost anything is possible if you fully set your mind to it and you really want it bad enough. Anything. Like, there's people that have had knee replacement and they run like that, right? And just, there's all kinds of things but this goes back to your internal guidance. I'm not saying stretch yourself. This is not like put yourself in the torture rack and hurt, do stuff you don't want to do. This is doing the things you actually have an interest in doing and staying fresh with them, and it's, maybe you want to learn how to do computer animation. Maybe you want to make a short film. Maybe you want to sing and produce a song. Maybe you want to produce a song and only share it with your family. Maybe you want to produce a song and put it on YouTube. Maybe you want to produce a song and do it anonymously. I don't care.
Yeah.
But you have some internal guidance about things that would stretch you, and just know it's good for your spirit. And it's good for your leadership, and which as a result, good for your company on what really works for you. So with that in mind, let's go to the next point that we talked about, Brad, which is, we're talking about doing this for you so you stay fresh and relevant and comfortable with change, right?
Yeah.
Comfortable with being uncomfortable and change and taking risks. But the thing to think about is what are experiences that you can create for your friends and family that would do the same?
Yeah.
So it could be friends and family, it could be your children and partner, and it could be your colleagues at work. But how can you be a catalyst for them? Because in our work, we are catalysts for organization. Or many organizations we come into are either in complete chaos or homeostasis, right? It's fast growth and messy, and they're trying to get a system to get, actually, what interesting? Either they need more homeostasis or they need less. We're like homeostasis adjusters. Either they need to get some or they got too much. And we got to adjust the needle on the homeostasis.
I kind of think of it like what we're doing in organizations is going in and going back to that yin yang diagram. So we're identifying and protecting the core, number one. And number two, what we're doing is we're stimulating the right kind of disciplined progress. And that's why we get such impressive results. I'd say so quickly. Yeah,
it is. But you know what it is, Brad? We are identifying and protecting the critical parts of the core.
Yeah.
And a bunch of the stuff they're protecting, they shouldn't be in many cases, and stimulating the right kind of progress. Yeah. So it's like cataloging and optimizing both the protecting and the stimulating, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome point. So basically, if you need a homeostasis assessment and adjustment, that's what we and the people we work with spend our time doing. But so the point of it is though is when it comes to just this stimulate progress piece, think about what can you do to kind of open that up and make that happen for your team. And I'll give you an example. A CEO worked with out of Chicago for many years. I'm proud to work with him. He's like my Greek brother. His name is Andrew Lamoris, and a company called Medics. He's an awesome guy, a very purpose-led organization. And we would always do our annual retreats somewhere else. Unfortunately, there were plans last year to do it somewhere spectacular. And it's usually tied to when we hit the numbers. If we hit the numbers, we do that and we go do some great strat planning in a different environment, which shakes up our thinking. But one of the times we did it in a place called Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. And we stayed in a nice place where we had our meetings, and we work hard. Like some people think of these executive retreats as just go and party and that. And we did do some fun stuff, but we would work 10, 12-hour days. Like we would really work hard and play hard too. But one of the days, Andrew arranged for us to go to an orphanage. And so we all packed supplies that the orphanage needed to take to the kids. And like he changed our lives that day.
Yeah.
Because going and working at an orphanage, I will just give you a 30-second version of it. In the end, we brought a dentist because the kids needed dental work. So some people were holding kids while they were getting dental work without all the Western stuff that we might expect people to have. Mm-hmm. But you were there seeing kids that looked like kids, like your own children.
Yeah.
In an orphanage, and it was a heartwarming and a heart crushing scenario at the same time. But the point of it is, he's a purpose-led organization. He created an experience that he got us doing stuff. We just didn't make donations. We were there with the kids for the day.
Yeah.
Having this experience that created a catalyst for us in lots of ways to have different thinking and a different perspective. That's just one tiny example. There's many, many, many more. Other CEOs, another CEO worked with in the Middle East, was creating a digital startup within their company. And he took a team that was planning a 1-year time frame to launch their first website on their digital startup.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, guys, you need to do it in 3 months. Right. And so the stretch he put on that team, and he says, it's okay, we'll do a simpler version, but it's live in 3 months, because he wanted speed and he wanted to build confidence in that team. So two very different examples. But how can you see the good in creating those experiences that shake things up and stretch people?
Through a catalyst. Like I think that for many people, underestimating the importance of a catalyst, and in those examples that you've given, it was an intentionally created catalyst going to those types of environments. Certainly what we do through going back and talking about the yin yang symbol, where stimulate progress, preserve the core. Our role in those organizations is to be the catalyst, is to drive that stimulation, because sometimes people can't do it, and it is an external person that can really drive that. That's the kind of the power of the relationship, if you're white, or the benefit of the relationship. It can be quite impactful.
Yeah. And sometimes you have the power within yourself to do it yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Like sometimes that, people can pull it. So the point of it is it's got to happen somehow. But there is a downside of this stimulating progress. It doesn't always work, And as I can share with you in my adventure back into kart racing, with my friends, I've bought a lot of spare parts. And I was sharing with you before, I got back into it last year and started playing with it again because my buddies wanted to do it, and my son has always, loved to do it. But as I'm, got my brand new cart at the end of the season last season, and I'm breaking it in, I'm supposed to be taking it easy, but then my two buddies are ahead of me, and I want to catch them. I can't help myself, and I am driving like as hard as I can. My son actually pulled off the track because he didn't like what he was seeing and what was going to come. And next thing you know, I'm trying to, at the very last second, I'm braking at the very last second. And I braked a millisecond too long, and it didn't work. And I went right off the track through the barricade, bent up the whole front of my go-kart. My steering wheel's bent forward. I was wearing the barricade, and it hurt a little bit. And then I had to do the kind of the ride of shame back when I had to come pick up my card and take it in. And we laughed our butts off because it was, it was hilarious because I was trying. But the point is, sometimes it's messy and it doesn't work and you fail.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty good one. I mean, and we crashed into each other a bunch and, have to replace parts on our carts, but that was probably, but I was trying as hard as I could. And I tried too hard and I pushed too hard. It was a mistake on my part, but you gotta be able to celebrate these. Now, this is why you also want to take steps and not, bet the farm, bet the family farm on whatever your move is, or as Jim Collins would call it, shooting bullets, not cannonballs.
Yeah.
But you've got to be able to celebrate success because there's always learning or growth, or at least one hell of a great story when things go up in a ball of flames and you don't make the corner and you crash bad.
Yeah. So what we're saying is celebrate sucking, celebrate the failures.
Yes.
The failures create the tension creates the growth. Hopefully you don't do that again.
Try not to, and it probably will happen in some form, but ideally differently next time.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's so important to celebrate the mistakes and the failures, so it makes it okay. So then people are more likely to take risks, and more likely, whether it's a personal risk or an emotional risk or a financial risk, it makes it easier for people to do that. It almost destigmatizes making mistakes because you're gonna. Like, if you take singing lessons and you sound like a dying horse, you're going to miss some notes. You're going to still sound crappy at times, but you're going to be better than you were before. And that's one of the most important things is, and I have, I've shared before on the show, but I have a goal every month to make a couple of big mistakes. Generally I don't usually miss my quota. Like I normally, I nail it. Sometimes I hit up by mid-month but what I know is if I'm not really making some serious mistakes, then I'm not pushing hard enough. Like I bought a new vehicle and went 4x4ing, and usually people take old crappy vehicles when they go up into the bush, into the trails, and I didn't. And so I noticed that I got scratches all down the side of my new truck. Oops. I saw the detail guy today and asked him if he could polish it out. He figured he'd get most of them, but he said, "Yeah, you got some deep ones. We might not get them all out." And again, it's live and learn, and at some point you got to be able to laugh about the ones, especially the ones that are the minor or not as consequential. The bullets versus if it's risking someone's life or risking your whole company.
Awesome. So let's move to wrap this up. So what we're saying here is you can get into a groove that can be detrimental in your person, in your company, in your leadership team, and you've got to find ways to continually stretch. We use the analogy of homeostasis. The homeostasis system controls the body and it regulates all of the operating functions of the body, and that's really effective. And that can be the analogy for what we're talking about in your personal business life, or in your company. And so you've got to find ways to continue to push against that align with the disciplines of the hedgehog that we talk about. What can you be the best at? What's your purpose? And what's your profit per X? Or what's the single way that you make money? And so not stretching can come at a great cost over time. So broadly, the things that we've discussed, to wrap it up, it's a bit like Newton's first law. Okay, if a body at rest or moving at a constant speed is moving at a constant speed or in a straight line, it will keep moving unless it is acted upon it by an external force. We didn't really touch on that, but that's really what we're saying through there. Maybe 1 out of 99 or 10 out of 99, we've got to find a way to stimulate. There's got to be a constant, consistent way to stimulate that progress. Putting yourself in areas where you are the student and not the master, and knowing that that will be uncomfortable in terms of your ego, your pride, your brand, your comfort, but that is what's important. Also, making it the norm to stimulate progress. So I think that we've covered off most of the, and the other one, sorry, is knowing that there's a Goldilocks zone. Knowing that there is a zone that is not too far and not too little in terms of stimulating progress. Anything that we've missed there, Kevin?
No, I just summarize it up, Brad. It's something you said. It's really important to get into a good groove as a business and a leader and a person, but it's equally important to get out of that groove at some point too. If you get in a groove and stay in a groove, it's comfortable, but it can lead you down the wrong road. You got to keep tweaking it and popping out of that groove every once in a while, so you keep perspective and you stay fresh and relevant.
Indeed. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. My name is Brad Giles, and joined as always by my co-host, Kevin Lawrence. My book, if you are so interested, is Made to Thrive: The 5 Roles to Evolve Beyond Your Leadership Comfort Zone. Kevin's book is Your Oxygen Mask First. Don't remember the subtitle. If you'd like to find me, you can find me at evolutionpartners.com.au, and Kevin is at lawrenceandco.com. Thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to having a chat in a week, and have a great week.